Hey everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the weekly Wringer series here on clanofthegraywolf.com. Now, today we've got a lot going on. I have a lot of things I want to talk about, which usually means a long episode, but I'm going to try really hard to limit the amount of time that I talk and get to the heart of what we're really chatting about. So, what are we going to talk about this week? Well, I do want to take a little brief tour back into some of the talk we had about the History Channel last week. I want to just make a couple comments that I forgot to make last week, as a matter of fact. And then we're going to move right on to the question for this week, which is about the way that Minecraft, in terms of the way that it was made, has or has not changed the industry for good. And then for next week, we haven't done a good comparison question in quite a while, and I know that next week we're going to be looking at coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the Wringer. I thought, what better way to keep keep things going with a good, hearty kind of comparison kind of question, where we just kind of stick two things together and see what happens and see what kind of battle ensues. First and foremost, though, would like to welcome some of our new members, and there were actually quite a few of you this week. We're very glad to have all of you on board, not just this week, but all weeks. Hope to see all of you come back for many, many weeks to come. So first of all, Doomsday 1981, kind of a gloomy sounding thing, maybe DEFCON 5 kind of thing happening there. Tim has started some kind of interesting, I guess, nomenclature for himself, but also apparently that's spreading, because now we have the person mystically known only as Alex. Tim happens to be a bit more gender specific than Alex, so maybe this is even more mysterious. But in any case, the entity that allows us to know them only as Alex. And then also Sanchez, which is also an interesting singular word name out there. Another interesting concept. Sanchez. Welcome to all of you guys. Wanted to say welcome to Maze as well, who I thought really brought some very interesting issues to light that reminded me of some of the things that I wanted to talk about last week. So welcome to you, Maze, but also wanted to say just a terrific, I thought, analysis of the ways in which the History Channel really does fall short, kind of in the ways in the popular kind of settings that it exists in now. And I think really highlighting some of the ways that it really looks different for someone that I think is a little more learned about a particular topic, or I would say learned in terms of the way that research is done, versus somebody that is probably, just watching TV on a Sunday afternoon. And I thought that was highlighted very well in your post, and I think it echoes my sentiments 100%, and I'll get to some of the issues that it kicked up in my mind in just a second. And lastly, has to also welcome the one and only Mog, which is fantastic. I mean, I haven't seen Mog in any kind of real way, for probably a decade. And, my favorite Mog Final Fantasy probably has to be Final Fantasy VI. And so, Mog, welcome to the Weekly Wringer. Honored to have you. Anyway, welcome to all of you out there. Thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you on board. And as I say before, I'd love to see all of you continue to contribute from weeks and months to looking forward into the future. So, now, as I said, Mays brought up some interesting issues that I forgot to mention last week, and I wanted to bring this out. I think if there's a good juxtaposition as to the right way to do educational programming and the wrong way to do it, I think it's going to be a very easy kind of linkage to draw. And I think Mays begins to do this as well. So let me maybe put the exclamation point on Mays's post for this week. So the Discovery Channel, which is something that many of you have vigorously defended in our conversation, and I completely understand why. The Discovery Channel happens to be one of my favorite channels, and it is definitely on my favorites. But the Discovery Channel did us all a tremendous disservice this year and this is ongoing as far as I know, by introducing a ridiculously bad and incredibly poorly argued and poorly put together from a scholarship standpoint series called Curiosity, which is an absolute embarrassment for the channel. Watching only a few episodes of that it just made it a shining example of everything that is completely wrong with doing unscientific and poorly founded research that gets thrown on to these channels for a 30-minute quick dip into a question that no one has any real business asking, without taking a kind of taking a few minutes to understand exactly theoretically where an argument can stand, right? That's one camp, right? Here's what I don't like, and in case I sound like I'm ranting, let me just try to pull this into one maybe simpler thought. Curiosity throws a question out there, and without even really asking the merits of what that research question might entail from a research standpoint, they instead take one particular standpoint on it, they answer it, and then they have a celebrity come on and kind of read aloud that particular answer to that particular question. So in other words, it has nothing to do with curiosity. It should be, a show called "Here's an Answer to a Question," right? I mean, that's it, right? It's not about kind of what's out there and what people are talking about. It's kind of like here's one piece of information for you, and it might or might not have anything to do logically with the question that actually gets asked at the beginning of the show. That's one methodology. Here's another one, and here's what I think actually does the role very, very well. Some of you are going to laugh when I tell you the title, but I think this is the best example I can think of. On the Science Channel, which is not part of the Discovery family of networks, thank goodness, Science actually does things very, very well. They generally, when they do documentaries, so on and so forth, or even shows, regular recurring shows, they tend to take a very scientific approach. Unlike Curiosity, which seems to be more politically motivated or happens to be more, and when I say political, I mean from a particular scientific standpoint, rather than trying to look at an issue and answer questions, or even pose greater questions for the user to then go consume other kinds of scientific knowledge. I think it's the right way to go. Science does it this way. And I think if I'm looking for the best answer in that, I'm looking at a particular series called, I'm trying to think of the exact name of it, but it's Morgan Freeman's Through the Wormhole, right? Now I know a show hosted by Morgan Freeman in which every episode has begun with a young Morgan Freeman enacting what is probably a fictional story from his history. That doesn't bode well for science, folks, right? That's probably not the way. That's probably not the greatest of omens that would ring the bell for the greatest scientific series out there. But hold on. If you watch one of those, and I invite you all to watch all of them because I think all of them are spectacular, instead of asking a question that's either one, unanswerable, and then leaving it, and then saying that it does have an answer, and then spending the rest of the episode giving you one particular point of view about how it is answered, and this is exactly what Mays was talking about, asking a historical question that cannot possibly be answered in one 30-minute special, and then presenting one 30-minute special as the way that science is moving, or the way that history has answered that question throughout the ages. What Through the Wormhole does, which I think is so much better, is it addresses a number of different scientific veins that are scientifically, I think, on the kind of bleeding edge. Here's what people are researching right now at universities, and here are the questions that they ask, and here's their answer. And oftentimes they completely and totally conflict with each other. But you get to see that there are so many different forces out there, and so many people that are informed about the kind of rigorous research that needs to be done in order to present educational content. I know I took a lot of time on that, more time than I've probably ever taken on a refresh from last week that I've ever done before. But I think it's very important, and it's one of the reasons I actually wanted to ask the question to begin with, and I just forgot to talk about it last week. So, Through the Wormhole, not Curiosity. As long as we're on board with that, guys, I think we're all going to have a great time. And whether we have a hive mind here or not, here on the Weekly Wringer, as some of you suggested, you are all completely welcome to disagree with me. There's no need to have the hive mind. But whether we do or do not have it, I think the hive mind should definitely flock through the wormhole and away from Curiosity, that vile, horrible show. All right. Now, I've got to move on to this week because we definitely aren't moving very quickly here. So this week I asked you about Minecraft, and it wasn't about Minecraft specifically, although some of you had a lot of good things to say about Minecraft. What I wanted to know more about was whether you think that the Minecraft development model has kind of changed things for the industry. And to be able to answer the question of, are we at kind of a watershed moment for video games and kind of changing how they get made because of something like Minecraft? Now, the consensus was, and I'll start with the first instance I saw of this phenomenon, from Estolia's contribution that said, really, the big boys, the folks that make the AAA titles, you're going to get more of the same out of them. This doesn't really affect those guys. They see this as kind of a fluky thing, which several of you highlighted, and they don't see this as a sustainable development model because they don't, the big, dark, dirty secret in the video game industry, guys, is that there happens to be, just like films, there happens to be a lot more that end up on the cutting room floor, ideas that end up on the cutting room floor, so many more of those than those ideas that actually make it into video games. And Minecraft happens to be an idea that really seemed to catch lightning in a bottle. And it's definitely difficult to catch lightning in a bottle more than once, right? And I think that makes, it difficult to replicate. That being said, so there we have it. I think Estolia says basically what many of you said over and over again, which is the idea that the AAA titles are not going to change by virtue of the idea of Minecraft. This is not a watershed moment in anything but perhaps indie games, which is, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, one of the reasons why I wanted to ask this question. I won't expand on that until I talk and give you my opinion, though. However, let's move on to Alucard Dal V, or I guess that's how I would say it. First of all, Minecraft is definitely kind of a fluke, and although that language is problematic, as was said in the post, fluke might be the best term, just because it is kind of a one-time deal. I don't think there's going to be another Minecraft that we'll probably see in the next 10 years, and we certainly haven't seen a Minecraft that came before it for 10 years. So it's kind of a fluke. And the smart money, from a developer standpoint, is on AAA titles. So the ways in which developers attack ideas is to go after the development of AAA kinds of titles. I couldn't agree more. That definitely does happen. However, as we said a few weeks ago, with mobile gaming and handheld gaming still being very popular, right? Especially mobile gaming on mobile phones, those kinds of things, you can really get away with having a very simple idea that you kind of do very little refining on. A lot of people code these things in a matter of a weekend, 2 weekends, 3 weekends, and then release it, especially on Android where it's not necessarily the wild, wild west, but it's a little bit, maybe one notch higher than that. Certainly not like Apple where they have controls on everything. You can release a game and see kind of what happens. And you can see a game really take off. And if it takes off in concept, you can go and be able to make another game that succeeds it in really, I think, pretty strong fashion. We've seen that through the course of time. So I think if we're talking about mobile games, this probably doesn't hold. It's not necessarily about AAA titles. And I wanted to show you that as a means of kind of illustrating the disruption. Minecraft doesn't necessarily lead to the disruptive force there. It leads to the disruptive force in other places, which many of you highlighted. But I think from a developer standpoint, if you're going to produce games that are the kind of cash cows, you're going to have to get a AAA title. Zynga, Rovio, why did I say Roxio? I'm like burning CDs. Anyway, Rovio, all of these different developers that are very small, PopCap, right? They make games that are very small concept, very large audience, and they make a killing doing it, guys. Make no mistake. So I think from a developer standpoint, it depends on what kind of developer you want to be. But so far, as Alucard Dalvi said, it tends to be the smart money on AAA titles. That being said, most AAA title ideas don't get made. Only some of them do. and that's why it might not be smart money. But anyway, another story, another time. We will definitely talk about that. In another weekly ringer. I could definitely see that being a topic. Now,